Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our webinar today. Before we jump in, let me quickly introduce myself and my team members. My name is Hussein. I am the Regional Sales Manager for UAE, Oman, and Kuwait. And with me are my colleagues Venkat and Muhammad. Venkat is our product director, and Muhammad is the business development manager handling Saudi and Bahrain. So we will take questions at the end of the webinar. And if anyone has any questions in Arabic, my colleague Muhammad can answer them. All right, so I will begin the presentation if everyone's ready. And if anyone cannot see the screen, please let me know. So, over the past few years, we have seen that every enterprise system has moved to the cloud, whether it be your ERP, HRMS, CRM systems, or any other kind of collaboration tools. So, what about physical access control? It's still running on the same architecture for the last 20 years. So today we will explore what changes when access control becomes cloud first and how it's shaping our intelligent spaces. Before we talk about technology, let's talk about how the environment has changed. Work is no longer location bound. Hybrid is standard. Teams are distributed. Operations move in real time. Organizations today are agile, mobile first, and asset light. AI is no longer a differentiator, it's an expectation. So, the simple question is, if the way we work has fundamentally changed, can legacy infrastructure still support it? The new work environment demands more from enterprise system, not enhancement, foundational capabilities. Modern space management now requires distributed infrastructure. Policies must deploy globally instantly. No centralized bottlenecks. Remote admin. Systems must be administered securely from anywhere. Physical dependency equals operational delay. Built-in availability. Downtime is no longer tolerated. Resilience must be designed into the core. Asset light. Organizations are reducing capital heavy infrastructure. Flexibility is the priority. Elastic scalability. Growth should not require hardware reinvestment. System must be able to scale dynamically. Seamless integrations. Enterprise ecosystems must communicate. Silos create risk and inefficiency. Mobile first design. Mobility is primary, not secondary. Intelligent analytics. Data is no longer enough. Systems must detect anomalies and deliver insight. These are no longer premium features, they are baseline expectations. Here's the reality. Most legacy systems were designed for a server centric world. Centralized infrastructure, hardware bound applications, local databases, manual uptime management. In this model, the application is tightly coupled to the hardware. If the server slows, the system slows. If the server fails, the system fails. Scaling requires buying hardware. Upgrades are heavy. Deployment cycles are slow. The architecture itself becomes the limitation. Now compare this with modern design principles. Here we are going to compare server-centric and service-centric architectures. On the left, we can see traditional server-centric model, and on the right, we can see the service-centric SaaS-based model. This is not just about where the server software is hosted. This is about how it is architected. Let's start with the server-centric approach. In this model, the application is monolithic. Everything runs on a static operating system. It depends on local databases. It depends on physical hardware. The architecture is tightly coupled. What does this mean? It means if one component fails, the whole system is impacted. Scaling requires hardware upgrades. Deployment cycles are very long. Upgrades are heavy. It's completely infrastructure dependent. Now, let's contrast this with the service-centric model. Service-centric means software as a service. The system is loosely coupled. It is built using microservices. Components are containerized. Services communicate through APIs. Infrastructure becomes abstracted. This enables elastic scalability, fault tolerance, rapid deployment, continuous integration and upgrades. Instead of being hardware bound, the system becomes cloud native. So the shift from server centric to SaaS is not just cosmetic, it's structural. One model is hardware dependent and tightly coupled, and the other is loosely coupled, scalable, resilient, and continuously evolving. And in today's world, we demand agility. Structure matters. SaaS models have predictable cost and adaptable performance. Let's look at it. Over here, we can talk about economics. When organizations evaluate traditional enterprise systems, they usually focus on what's visible. Here you can see the depiction of an iceberg. The top part, which is in white, is visible to the customer, and the one below the water are invisible costs. So let's see what is visible. Licenses, hardware, initial purchase cost. This is all tip of the iceberg. This is the visible portion, which typically represents only 15% of the total cost of ownership. Now let's look at it. Layer 1, licenses and hardware. This is what gets budget approval. This is what appears in procurement sheets, but it's only the surface. Now let's look at what is below the water. Layer 2, infrastructure tax. Here you need servers, redundancy planning, refresh cycles every few years. Hardware doesn't just sit there, it ages. Let's look at layer 3. This is the software part. Here you need operating system licensing. You need database licensing. You need security software. You need client access licenses. Each layer adds a recurring financial weight. Layer 4. This is the operational overheads, power, cooling, physical space, monitoring. These costs are rarely allocated directly to the system, but they are very, very real. Layer 5. Here it's about compliance and manpower, patching, security audits, vulnerability and penetration testing, backup verification, dedicated staff IT to handle all of this. Infrastructure heavy systems demand infrastructure heavy oversight. So, when you combine all of these layers, studies have consistently shown that 80 to 85% of the total cost of ownership sits below the surface in infrastructure and operations. Most of the cost does not create new business value. All of these additional costs. Over to you, Venkat.
Yeah, thank you, Zain. Let me take the control also. Yeah, good evening, everyone. It was a very neat explanation of what has evolved in the market and what is the expectation from the market and how we have to catch up. Let me pick few things which Hussein explained, and before I go ahead with other slides and all. We were talking about multiple things. One is on the operation front. One point was the multi-site location, where suppose you as a customer has multiple sites across the geography, and you have one policy which needs to be implemented at multiple places. Okay. So how do you, as a business continuity, how do you make sure that the policy is implemented across all the places without any inconsistencies? When it comes to a silo system, that's very difficult because you have to audit and see to that everything happens at the same time. It can be as simple as a holiday policy, or it can be very complex one also, right? So how do you make sure this particular policy gets implemented across all the boards? So that's one of the expectation from the market, right? Second, we are also moving towards people, administering the system from a remote place, because access control, unlike any other system, is where the infrastructure and also the people is being managed by one single system. It's more or less like a central system from where everything is getting connected. Okay, so people like to control, monitor from a remote site. I mean, from it can be from some remote place inside the premises itself, or it can be from any other place where they want to do it immediately, because it is all time sensitive, right? So the people want to adapt to a mobile native culture. That's one of the point I could see. Second is on the infrastructure itself, because as again from the point of view of business continuity, people don't want to have a downtime in their facility, right? So especially when it comes to something like a security system where you're allowing people inside the place where data is being processed for your customer, as you have also your customer. So you want to have 100% uptime in terms of how it is being handled. And also, when there is sudden increase in your the requirement or at that particular timeline, you want the system to be capable of doing it without making you spread more money into the infrastructure. So that's one of the point which I could see. And also, you want some kind of intelligence at all levels, be it a cloud system or the devices which are there at the lower level at the site as a hardware, right? So, so these are multiple expectations which are there when it comes to a modern workplace. We will also show you how we are able to cater to it in terms of the solution. But before that, one of the point which I just mentioned is basically how the infrastructure is ready for the expectation of the customer, right? So this you would have seen very often, likely because you people work with the technology consultants for making the system ready before you get the system or the site live. So what usually happens is, say for example, I know that so many people will come into that particular site or office. That is the traffic, right? So be it a SaaS model or an on-prem model, I would know what is the traffic which is coming, which is minimum, which is maximum, what is the average of it. And usually what happens is I usually have to size the infrastructure. If it is going to be a legacy system, of course, the server, the SQL, everything according to this number, okay? Because you're doing an engineering. So either what happens is that I under provision it because I don't want to take a risk of huge capex infra. And what happens if there is a sudden increase in that particular traffic? Then the system itself will be a failure. Or I take a buffer and I over provision it. Say I need a 16 GB RAM of server, but for the safety, I'm investing on 32 GB RAM. So there is a cascading cost for it, right? Because you're over provisioning the system. So there's no via media for this. That we call it as a step function. Basically, you can only upgrade your system in steps, correct? So, and also when we are talking about high availability and all, which in a legacy system we call it as redundancy. So when you are talking about redundancy, you can add one more redundant server. You can add two more redundant server. How many more you can add? Theoretically, yes, you can add more, but there is a finite possibility for it, right? So these are the traps when it comes to a on-premise or a legacy system where you don't have the flexibility to move around the curve. Either you jump from one tier to other, which also gives you a cost implication. Otherwise, you have to be content with what you are choosing as a decision. Okay. So this is very important theory which you want to keep in mind because this is part of your decision not only on the capex front, but when you are operating the site, it also has implication. As I said, there is cascading implication because you are choosing the SQL according to it. Your software assurance for the SQL will be according to it. So it's not one decision you take, but it is the decision on the front of like 5 years, 10 years you are operating the site. So we were talking about yeah, one second. Yeah. So we were talking about the step function, how there is a trap in terms of how you're provisioning the system and all, right? So and we were also talking about what is the expectation in terms of the market itself. So what happens when you're choosing not to move from a legacy system to SaaS? Of course, we are not saying that legacy system is bad, but it is built for a different kind of a world, something like say 10 years before where the expectation was less and also the systems were different. Now when we are talking about the contemporary time, there is the inherent losses which you have in terms of how the system is operated. For example, loss of agility. So basically, as I said, the policy is taking time to update for each of the location. When you have multiple locations, that's a loss in terms of agility. And you're also having loss in terms of resilience because you're not catering to the BCP guidelines. For example, you need a geo redundancy as a resilience point that is not naturally built up in a legacy system. So either you have to invest on multiple sites or you have to live with it. And in terms of the integrations and other kind of innovations also, you're lagging behind because the world is also moving along with it. When we are talking about the adoption into the cloud-based system, it is not only us. There are multiple players in the market who are involved in a building infrastructure who are moving into it due to the advantages which are there. So there is a lag between your adoption and your adoption by your peers in the market, which also could be a marketing disadvantage for you as, say, a developer. So that's one of the cost of inaction. So how do we cater this? No, how do we mitigate these things? Because we have challenges here, right? So there are multiple challenges which has to be bridged. So usually when there is a challenge, there has to be a hero who has to mitigate that, right? So our hero, we call it as Access360.ai, which is a cloud native AI powered security platform. So AI powered itself is a niche where we are the first one to introduce an AI powered platform. And over and above it, we are also encapsulating that in a cloud native architecture to give you more advantage, right? So what is that? How does we introduce Access360.ai, which is the SaaS platform of IDQ? At the core philosophy, we talk about three things. One is the secure, seamlessness, and sustainability. So secure is where we talk about no, the how the structure of the software itself is done, how the zero trust architecture is done, how it complies to different kind of cybersecurity standards. And seamlessness is the point which Hussein was also mentioning about that the system should not be a silo. That's an expectation, right? So when you're talking to anyone, I mean, be it your own user team or anyone else, they will say, okay, I want integration with HRMS. I want integration with that because nobody wants to no, use a system which is just sitting there and doing what it was. That's it. So it doesn't give you any kind of benefit out of it. So we, at the core, we talk about seamlessness in the integration, which I'm referring to. And we also talk about sustainability because we also support multiple different things like mobile native. and we also support the credentials in the mobile. So basically, we are also transforming everything right from the credentials at the site to a mobile adaptable interface. So this is the core philosophy of the software platform, but we are wrapping it into a very agile architecture, which we call it as a cloud architecture. So why? We partner with Azure, for example, as our cloud partner for infrastructure. So this takes care of multiple different things, as I said, in terms of high availability, the resilience or the geo redundancy. It is structured in a way that it is serverless. What is serverless? Imagine that there is one instance of you, your system is there in the Azure cloud of ours. So when there is an increase in the traffic, like I was mentioning about the step pattern, right? So when there is an increase in the traffic, the Azure automatically, along with our application, gives multiple instances to manage that particular traffic load. It increases the capacity of the database so as to serve for that particular increase in the traffic and increase in the spike of the transactions. So there is one high availability which is there as an advantage for you. There is also the adaptability which is there when it comes to an increase in the system or the decrease in the system. So it also helps in terms of like when there is no traffic, it balloons down. Basically, it's like say an elastic balloon. So it balloons down to minimal state where it is only occupying what is to be done at that time, right? So that is the auto scaling also, in fact. So it wraps up the core philosophy into a cloud architecture. And third thing, which I was talking about before as well, is the intelligent edge. So you're talking about a very robust system at the cloud level. So you can ask what happens to the devices at the site level, right? So these devices, by default, IDCube as a platform provider, we are partnering with hardware systems, right? So the inherent advantage it gives you is that you're not logged in with one particular type of hardware or the software platform, even if that is the case. So these the controllers or the devices which we are talking about, they are also intelligent and they are able to adopt to the architecture which I was talking about in terms of the software platform. So what it does is one, it adheres to the security protocol, the cybersecurity standards which are there, which I'll explain you in the consequent slides. And also it has an intelligent edge. So usually this is one of the questions which happens to be asked whenever I interact, is that what happens when the network fails? Because we are talking about a controller or the device talking to the cloud platform of yours. What happens to the network when it fails? See, these controllers, they constantly send all the data. Whenever there is a door opening or any kind of event, instantly it goes through a secure channel, which we will discuss later. So it instantly updates all the data. So when there is a network issue, okay, inherently or hypothetically, if there is a network issue, what usually happens is that it it has the capability to control that particular dose or whatever it is handling. And once that is up, it sends all these data to the cloud. So there is no data log loss for you. Okay. So this is the intelligent at edge we are talking about. Okay. So when it comes to these things, so how is this thing secure? Okay. This again one of the no inhibitions when we talk about cloud is that secure, right? There are two inhibitions which usually come up. One is whether the cloud is secure. It's not in my premises, or the second one is it should be very costly because it's a new technology, right? So that's something which we usually think about. So first, let's debunk the first one, which is the secure part. Um, in in cloud infrastructure, especially in the SaaS platform of ours, we follow certain standards. Okay, the standards right from how the data is stored, how the data is communicated. So one of the major standards in cybersecurity is TLS, which is a protocol or a standard for communication. Okay, imagine this like this. TLS is something like a protocol when you have a communication between 2 points to two persons. Just imagine that I'm one of the person, there's another person, so it established the authentication between two persons. Okay. So when it say for example, does that using keys. So it is a combination of keys which will verify whether both ends the right persons are there. This is to avoid where someone tries to impersonate. So in this case, when it comes to a security architecture, controller is talking to the cloud infrastructure. So either on both the sides, someone should not try to impersonate the other device and try to add something which is malicious, right? So that is where TLS encryption is very important. It authenticates, it establishes a TLS tunnel, and after that, all the packets, the information, we are talking about the data logs, it goes from one device to another or one device to the cloud platform. It is all encrypted by AES-256. Basically, it has encryption channel of 2 power of 256, which is very difficult to break. Okay, so that's the one of the secure gateway we have in terms of the communication. We also talk about zero trust architecture, where, for example, let me give you two examples here. One, when it comes to identity management, basically the user authentication, every time there is a user who's authenticated from a identity platform like a Entra ID or an Okta, unless and otherwise they are authenticated by that particular platform and a secure key is given to the access360.ai, it doesn't believe them. So it is not that already the system is logged in by the user, so you have to believe them that they are the person and all. Every time there should be a authentication. This also applies to connections like API connections, which whenever we are talking about integration, it's all about API connections, right? So each API connection is also having multiple levels of checkpoints. It can be as good as if there is a denial of service attack, DDoS. Basically, a particular malicious person is trying to send more requests in terms of API and trying to bog down the system. Then it is able to identify and it is able to eliminate the particular request source. Okay, so those kind of architecture is inbuilt at each level so that the system is never down because of such attacks. Okay, and also we have certain the procedural standards which are there in terms of the vulnerability and penetration testing. So what happens is basically the platform is tested for the gaps which could be there in terms of multiple services, and it is also tested for attacks, the brutal method attacks, which can happen in the cybersecurity world we will live in. So the overall platform itself is baked in terms of the security and the checkpoints which are there. Okay, so this gives you advantage and assurance that it is secure. Not only that, there are compliance as well. So security is something which is inherent, which is inside the particular platform, and there is certain checkpoints which is there by the market itself, which has to be complied, right? So access360.ai by default comes with this native compliance stack. So what happens is, say SOC2 type 2, which is basically an audit, which checks how each of the data is, how confidential is the data, how is things managed by that organization, what is the retention which is happening into the data, how it is retained, whether they are following all the procedures. So this is a continuous audit. So SOC2 type 2 is basically a continuous audit on the organization, how the data of the customer is managed. Okay. There are multiple factors to it, but yes, that's the macro level explanation. GDPR, as you know, is about the how the data of a person, because we are talking, as I said, we are talking about people also here. So how the data of the person is being handled? Is it like you're gaining only the minimal required data points from a person, which is required for that particular operation? You're not. It's not like I want to book a ticket for you and I'm asking you right from everything. So example for it. So GDPR takes care of those kind of checkpoints, and ISO 27001 and 27018 is basically how the security management system itself is designed, what it is capable of, how it is attacking the vulnerabilities, and also 27018 is basically on the PII. Again, the personal identification markers, how you're handling it, when especially for the cloud-based system. So as default, this comes as a compliance. So you can say that it's not like default compliance which comes with, say, you would have seen all the electronics having a CE mark, right? So it's not something like that. It requires certain amount of the data control. You have to prepare for the audit, and it's a big task for any kind of an IT system. So just before, I'm just trying to move ahead before we go into the next slide. These compliances are coming by default for you in a SaaS platform, but when it comes to a legacy system, these require your IT team to work on in terms of the data preparedness for it, and there is a cost for it, which is, as Hussein was saying, it is coming under the iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg doesn't cover this. Okay. Yeah. So on the infrastructure, we were talking about availability. Basically, the system has multiple instances of itself in the cloud server. So if one fails, another takes over. And this is not finite. Like what I said, yes, you can make such a robust, high availability, geo redundancy system even in legacy platforms. But the problem is, it's not infinite. You cannot make that kind of a robustness in a legacy system because you're limited by number of servers you add. Okay, limited by number of licensing you take for a geo redundancy. So all those things are there. But here, all these things happen by default because we are partnering with a cloud infrastructure partner. Third thing, we are also talking about the security patches, the software upgrades. These are very important, right? So it's like telling a person how to operate a thing, and then there is a new kind of threat which is evolving, and you have to tell them that this can come in as a threat, but unless you update the software in terms of the security or the software upgrades, it doesn't happen. But the challenge when it comes to an on-prem system is that you have to do it manually. One, there should be a accountability in terms of happening these things. Second, it involves you going as your IT team going to each of the site and doing that. So it involves cost, it involves accountability, it can be bringing up gaps in the system. So that is all not there because the software and security upgrades automatically happen over the cloud for all the sites, all the systems. And no, regional expectations also. We do have our own instances in the Middle East region. So it complies with the local laws. That is one thing. And second is it also gives you low latency in terms of little optimization in terms of the performance for the people who are there in the Middle East region. Okay. Yes. So I was highlighting about the operations. I was highlighting about the infrastructure. I was talking about intelligent devices. And when I started the slide, I was also telling you that it is AI powered. Okay, it should be curious. What is AI powered here? Um, so this is like icing on the cake. So we were talking about multiple wrapping of the advantageous systems, but this is more like an icing on the cake, where in a traditional access control system, we talk about the logs. You, as an operator of a much bigger site, you will have like millions of logs. So you have to identify where the anomalies are happening. Where is this? All of a sudden there is a couple of door denied event which is happening. So you have to identify that pattern from Excel. It's very tedious, as you know. So what we do, we have our own AI/ML engine which does this part for you. Okay, so it takes all these data which is there lying around, which is not being used also, and it finds a pattern. It can be in terms of anomalies, as good as someone trying to access a door continuously in a break of 3 days. There is a pattern it identifies, it flags that there is a insider threat. As you know, insider threat is one of the most important thing you want to identify because even your insurance will not cover that. So that's one of the point, and it can be something as good as the occupancy. We are talking about hybrid workforce and people coming in only in certain number of days in a week, right? So you also want to know what is the pattern happening here. So one of the source of truth for it is access control because people have to cross the access control for getting into the site. So we give kind of a heat map across the weeks, across the zones in terms of granularity. It can be days, it can be hours, which gives you an idea which is your lean and strong period. So that's something we give as a part of the AI dashboards. It also gives you vulnerability in terms of how your doors are managed, whether there is a policy in terms of alarm management. So these things gives you an overall picture. So we're talking about the core philosophy in terms of security and architecture. We were talking about the how robust it is in terms of integration, and we are also talking about the infrastructure, actual infrastructure, how it is advantageous for you. And over and on above it, we are also giving you intelligence, how your space is behaving or how your users are behaving. So this sums up kind of a value for the Access 360 in terms of, as I said, security, agility, and resilience. But we are talking about money also, right? Because you're investing money. So when we talked about the iceberg effect, we said like, how much of what you see is actually the cost. there could be something hidden below the water surface. So we will talk about that. Just 2 slides. Okay. So as I said, theoretically, it is possible for a legacy system to behave like a SaaS platform which is on cloud. Okay, because SaaS platform, as I said, it covers high availability, disaster recovery, network connection between multiple sites, updates, and compliance. All these things are covered in one single cost. It's a subscription cost for you. You know what is the cost. Say, for example, I know what is the Netflix subscription for me per month, right? I need not worry about how many servers I need to keep, how many movies I have to buy and keep it in the server and all. No, that's one time cost for me, right? But in case of a legacy system, I need to buy the software licensing. Okay, you think usually when it comes to a comparison, unfortunately, we are only seeing the software licensing part. Okay, but what is not seen is if you want to have high availability, you have to have multiple servers. That's an investment. Those servers will have OS. Those servers will have SQL cost. That SQL cost will have a software maintenance. So that is not seen. But here, if you add these kind of factors, okay, when you want disaster recovery, you are adding one more geolocation, right? When it comes to geolocation, you have to add licensing for it. You have to have a middleware which handles this hot redundancy. That is also a cost. When it is a multi-site, you don't want to have redundancy or no disaster recovery, but still you have multiple sites. Okay. My colleague Hussein will also explain one of the use cases which happened in reality where there are multiple locations, they didn't have an intra-connectivity, and how it would have cost them in terms of the investment for them to happen it. So there is even if you have intra-connectivity, you need to invest on the VPN for secureness. All those things are there. And when it comes to update and patches and compliances, as I said, compliances is a cost. Okay, you need to invest the time and money and your IT manpower on it. So these are the costs which gets added in terms of the OPEX. And one more thing I forgot is basically there is the lifeline for the hardware which you are invested on the year zero. Okay, usually it is taken as 5 years. So you are investing on a server on 0 years. After 5 years, it's usually refreshed. That is, usually it has to be replaced. Okay. So this cost never comes up in any of the discussion or comparison because it's not like it's like 5 years down the line, but still you're paying for it, right? So that is also one more cost which gets added up. So there are multiple costs which are there when it comes to a legacy system to even slightly try to behave like a SaaS system. Okay, it's not even equal, but still there is a lot of cost which is involved both in capex and opex. So just give you an example of a scenario where you have say 3 sites or 300 readers or 1,500 employees. For a 5 years, the total cost of ownership, I'm not talking about the software licensing, the total cost of ownership in terms of all these things could give you a lower TCO in terms of SaaS, like 30 to 35%, which is huge because see, TCO we are talking about is not capex, not opex, it is both. Okay. The total money which you have to spend over the period of 5 years between two systems could be as good as 35% difference. So this is the true cost which you have to take into account when you are comparing two systems of a legacy and a SaaS-based system. So we are talking about features. We talked about the true cost of ownership. How it has a financial implications also, right? So if you see the graph here, so it is you can consider that private cloud and on-premises as both legacy systems for the comparison sake here. So between the SaaS and the other two systems, there is a huge cost. Which the difference which you see at the year one is the cost which you put in as a capex. Okay, be it a server, be it a VM licensing or whatever. Okay, so the cost which you have put in on year zero, it has implication in finances also, right? So you are losing out on the interest you would have saved when you would have not invested that particular money or quantum on the first year itself. Okay, there is an interest saving which is there when you go for a SaaS model. That's one. Second is the budget predictability. No amount of happiness will happen for your finance team when they know that they have to allocate a fixed budget instead of you going for a system which gives you surprises all of a sudden. You'll say, okay, the SQL has been established, but it doesn't have a software assurance. I have to go for it in the second year. It's a surprise cost for the finance, right? So it gives you predictable value. It's a fixed cost from the SaaS for your finance team to handle. Okay. And in terms of the scalability also, as I said, there are two scalings. One is the background architectural scaling, which happens when there is an increase in the traffic. And we are also calling about the step function, which we were talking about, where basically when you want to scale your operations, you are having 3 sites today and you want to go for 5 sites. You did not worry about the infrastructure which needs to be added in terms of the access control. It's only that you have to add number of users, number of readers, and it's just go. And that also helps you in terms of getting the site live very quickly, which is also a cost for you because you would have been keeping people at a different site where you're spending money, right? So there are multiple hidden costs, which is usually not taken into account, but it is very important for you. Right. So we were talking about all these things. I would give it back to Hussein for him to explain the actual use cases which he has handled in the region, which will give you a kind of final vision how it can help you in terms of the system. Over to you, Hussein. I'll also give you the control.
Thanks, Venkat. How do I take the control back? I can change. I cannot change the slides.
I've revoked my control. It is with you only.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Venkat, for the wonderful explanation. I hope everyone got a good, understanding of our SaaS model. So here I want to give you uh, my personal experience. So you probably thinking, are people even accepting cloud right now in the Middle East? Is the country ready for that? It absolutely is. Over the last 1 year, I have done some amazing cloud projects. And I'm not talking about, small one location, two locations, small business enterprise, small businesses that have taken this cloud solution. I'm talking about large enterprises. So I just want to give two examples over here. So the first example is for a leading hospitality group. This hospitality group has hotels, more than 40 hotels across the cities in the UAE, across the seven Emirates. So, what was the challenge that they were facing? First was the siloed risk. If they blacklisted by the way, first of all, they wanted a visitor management system. They wanted a system where they are able to whitelist and blacklist people and also reduce their operational costs of managing these 40 locations. So, what were the challenges that they had? Number one, localized blacklist. Because there was no connection between these 40 hotels. So, if they blacklisted somebody from one location, they could still gain access to the other locations. And number two, like I mentioned, there is, IT sprawl. So it was very difficult to maintain, the servers at each and every location. There was a dedicated staff needed for this, and this was creating operational overheads. So what was the solution that we gave them? We gave them our cloud SaaS model. How did it help them? It made their watch list global. So now, if they blocked one person in one location, he's blocked everywhere. No need of extra steps to be done. Automatically, he gets flagged in all properties. Number two, unification of identity. Right? The same visitor, if he's enrolled himself once in one location, he is, his information is there available in the cloud and it's accessible by all of the properties. So if this guy goes into another location and let's say he's a VIP, when they put his Emirates ID, they can see all of his details. He does not need to re-register himself. They know who he is. So if any kind of additional greeting needs to be given to him, the entire hospitality groups database is available across all locations without having to do any manual work. And number three, asset light. You're not managing 40 servers across 40 locations anymore. You just have one cloud account that hosts all of your data. So, what was the result for the customer? He got enhanced guest safety, he got a streamlined check in process, and it tremendously improved his operational efficiency and it provided him with audit trails. So, he was able to reduce his overhead costs. He was able to streamline the entire customer experience because now people are not waiting in line. Contractors, delivery drivers from Talabat or Noon, and guests of tenants. All of these people are not standing in line to come into their turn. They just come, put their Emirates ID, and get access. This was the first case study, and the second case study is also for another very large property developer for one of the largest malls in the Middle East, right? Here they had, so what was the challenge? What did they need? They had a VIP lounge. They have a VIP lounge, and they want to give special VIP privileges to their guests who reach a certain spending limit, right? So, what was the challenge? Disconnected workflows. They wanted to grant access to VIPs, but this was a manual process. They had to manually verify a certain person's spending criteria and then provide him the VIP access rights for a certain, duration of time, which made revoking these rights at, different points in time also very difficult. Then second was the security versus convenience aspect. Here, they wanted to not give physical access cards, right? They had to manually search for somebody who's reached the spending limit, then give him a call, ask him to come collect his card. And then, when his access was over, they would have to call him again, ask him to return the card. This is not what something they wanted to do. Another option they had was a QR code. But this static QR code is a security risk, right? He can take a snapshot of the QR code and send it to any of his friends, and they would also be able to get access to the VIP lounge. So these were the challenges. What was the solution we gave them? Again, we deployed our cloud solution for them, but not only that, we integrated with their lounge management system. So now what happened is it made their process seamless. They did not have to manually find out who reached the spending threshold. Once that particular person reached a spending threshold, automatically the rights were granted to him via their mobile app. So the mall has their mobile app, and once he reaches the threshold, automatically he's been given a dynamic QR, which also removes the security risk. Now, in a dynamic QR code, the QR code is not static. You cannot take a snapshot and send it, or it's not coming into your email. It's inside the application and it's changing its pattern every 3 seconds. So if he takes a snapshot and sends it to somebody, by that time that pattern is already changed. So this gave them the security assurance. So what was the result? A seamless VIP experience for the visitors or for the shoppers, because they didn't have to physically come and get cards or accesses. It was automatically given based on their spend, and the access was given dynamically. Once it's revoked, it just gets out from the application, right? Their mobile app. You don't have to call the customer, ask him to return the card or block his card and create negative experience for the customer. This was solved. And next was the security. As I said, when they had the dynamic QR code, it was automatically there in the mobile app, and they would get seamless access, and it could be seamlessly revoked as well. So here we are just trying to show what is the advantage for consultants and system integrators to actually pitch the cloud solution. We look at consultants first, right? It eliminates vendor lock-in. We are giving open-ended architecture. We use Mercury and HID boards. So it makes the customer fully secure in the future. When he needs to, let's say, add some other system, or he wants to upgrade something, he does not have to change any of his physical hardware. He can just, integrate with the same hardware his new system. He does not have to completely remove the access control system and put a new one, right? Future proof compliance. So now all of our compliances are already there: SOC 2, GDPR, ISO, VAPT. All of these certifications ensure that the customer, when he's implementing this solution, he's future proof. He is always compliant to all of these certifications. He does not have to apply for these certifications himself. And then the third point is it's asset light, right? You don't have local databases and local IT people having to manage these resources. Everything is on the cloud, and everything is on the responsibility of the solution provider, which is ITCube. So this is for the consultants, and for the system integrators. How does it help you? it provides you recurring revenue, right? Cloud uh, is a subscription model. So you not only retain the customer, but you actually get revenue every year. It's plug and play, right? You do not have to go install the software, configure it, spend 1 week, sit there, have your project manager sit over there, configure everything, train the customer. None of this is required. We, the manufacturer, which is ID Cube, he opens the cloud account for the customer and everything is pre-configured over there. And the training will be provided remotely to the customer. No need for physical presence. Removes 70% of your on-site commissioning cost. And then it's zero touch maintenance, right? When you are taking SLAs from the customer, all of the burden is on the solution provider because it's a cloud solution, right? He can remotely maintain it throughout the year and every year. You do not have to send someone for maintenance of the software. You only need, most of the issues come in the software configuration and in the software level. Only when hardware level uh, service is required, you will have to send your engineers, which never comes across because we over here are using Mercury and HID boards, which have a lifespan of 17 years. So 90% of your maintenance cost is removed and you get the full advantage of the SLA that you take from the customers. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening to us. If you have any questions, you can, of course, put them in the chat right now, and we'll answer them for you.
I
Thank you
think
once
there is
again for
already
spending
one
time
question.
with us.
Yes, I think there is already a question in the chat
Mhm.
which asked about the ML algorithm. Let me just give you a short answer for it. One, yes, it needs a quite at least 30 days of data for any kind of a ML system to understand the site in terms of the access control. Second, on a specific ML algorithm, we use, I cannot diverse much on because it's an IP again, the second and third question, but uh, it's a hybrid of supervised and unsupervised learning because it doesn't label the threats. Basically, it works on the baseline and then it sees what is the average for that particular site. Just to give you an example, say we are talking about anomalies like the unusual high usage of cards, so it doesn't say that 50 number of swipes in a day is unusual. It takes an average of that particular site. It can be 70 also, which is average. Then it calculates which is the threat. So that's how it works. Yeah. So how do you maintain the disaster recovery setup? Does it require extra license? No, it doesn't require extra license. By default, in the infrastructure we have with Azure, it is baked. So you don't need to pay anything extra. It's, as I said, for SaaS, it's only the subscription license which you pay for. Uh, yeah, the Azure instance is in Middle East. I cannot divulge again the location because of the market this thing, but it is in the Middle East, locally located, so complying to the standards.
Yes, so just to add to that, if the customer requires, of course, local support, local instance issuance, we can absolutely comply to that.
Okay, let me move on to the next question. Is SaaS cost based on users or doors or controllers or otherwise? The SaaS cost is based on the primarily based on the number of readers and the users. So that's the macro factor for a SaaS subscription. How flexible the SaaS model when it comes to customizing the software as per the client needs, and how hardware could be connected to the cloud. The question number two, how flexible the SaaS model is when it comes to customizing, is again a case to case basis. So you're talking about the customization in terms of our software, or is it you're talking about something like an integration? Can you please elaborate on that point? Meanwhile, I'll move on to the third question. How hardware could be connected to the cloud? Yes, all the hardwares which we are talking about, the devices, be it the controllers of HID or Mercury and the devices which we usually support in terms of biometrics, they are cloud ready. So it can be directly connected to our cloud platform. It is done through your the firewall which you have. We would give you the details in terms of the reports which has to be opened and what is the sites which has to be whitelisted. Uh, or we can also have an arrangement where you don't want to connect multiple devices from the site to the cloud over the internet. Again, it's through the normal internet. You can have something like a 100 Mbps of no, internet service that would be sufficient. So in case you don't want to connect multiple systems and you have a VLAN gateway or something like that, we can still connect to that gateway and it can be connected to the system of ours in the platform. So that is possible. Does your system support multi-tenant setup and for a telco operator setup, is it possible? Can you explain on that second question? Yes, multi-tenant setup is your question basically on your tenant having multiple, no, for example, I'm assuming that you're talking in terms of like a, office building having multi-tenants, or is it something different? Can you elaborate on that question, please? Okay, I have the clarification on that question. How flexible the SaaS model when it comes to customization? Access 360.ai. So you have multiple customization option in terms of the look, how it look and feel and logo you can add and all. But if you're asking about the software architecture, it is not customizable. It is standard because we have to go through all the compliances which I talked about. So we cannot change multiple things according to the site or the customer. Okay, you're talking about private cloud. The question which was posted before, does your setup support multi-tenant setup? I mean, multi-tenant setup of cloud. So you're talking about private cloud. Yes, we do have on-prem option in terms of the software platform that can be hosted in a private cloud. That as actually a perpetual license. Yeah, you're right. It can be done, but that's a separate solution which we have.
Just to add, if anybody needs a demo of our cloud solution, please you can reach out to me. My email will be there and my phone number as well. So of course we are more than happy to give you demo licenses and for you to try it out and to give you a walkthrough of our software. We'll be more than glad to do that. So if anybody needs that, please let us know. All right, so if there are no other questions, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for attending our webinar. It was really glad to see you all attend our webinar, give us a chance to present our solutions, and I hope it added some value to you. Please reach out to me for any requirements, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much, guys.